Good morning, this is Neil Spate, the Thurrock News. As you can see, the Holocaust Memorial Day service in Grays. This service is going to go on for about an hour, so we're not going to be here for all of it, but we will give you a flavour of what is happening. Many school children and civic dignitaries are here. A welcome is from Father David Rollins, the new area dean of Thurrock.
International Holocaust Memorial Day is actually tomorrow, the 27th of January. The date marks 79 years since the liberation of Auschwitz, the most infamous of Nazi concentration camps. However, given the strong support in Thurrock from local schools, in marking Holocaust Memorial Day, we are holding our annual service today to retain this support from them. Holocaust Memorial Day is a chance for us all to remember the terrible events that saw 6 million Jewish people murdered during the Second World War, and the more recent appalling genocides that have occurred in places like Cambodia, Rwanda, Darfur and Bosnia. I would like to thank all the pupils here, including Grays Convent, High School, William Edwards, Little Thurrock Primary School and Woodside Academy, who will later give readings and performances as part of today's events. By ensuring our future generations remain a key part of all collective reflections of these horrific historical events, we can help them to understand the lessons of mutual understanding, justice and respect that must be carried forward. Together, we must continue to foster an understanding across different communities and reflect on our continuing responsibility.
It's the Mayor of Thurrock, Councillor Sue Little, explaining the purpose of today's ceremony. As I say, it will go on for quite a while. Among those who will be speaking will be members of local students and various local schools, and we will return to the point of the ceremony to listen to them shortly. Also speaking will be Councillor George Coxshall on behalf of the Council Administration, and Councillor John Kent, the leader of the opposition. And then later, stones will be laid at this symbolic memorial. As you can see, the railway tracks. This is one of the more unknown parts of Grays. Not a lot of people know this memorial garden. The Herbert E. Brooks Memorial Rest Garden is actually here. We will return to the ceremony. Apologies for the sound quality of the speakers, it's not particularly great and didn't really help when a huge thunderous helicopter went over the top.
A guaranteed constant, but rather a fragile entity that requires continuous protection and nurturing. The echoes of the Holocaust remind us that the seeds of discrimination, racism, and injustice can quickly take root if left unaddressed. By understanding the fragility of freedom, we become guardians of a shared responsibility to uphold the principles of equality, respect, and human rights. Holocaust Memorial Day serves as a call to action, urging us to confront temporary challenges that threaten the very essence of freedom. By remembering the past, we equip ourselves with the knowledge and awareness needed to build a future where tolerance and hatred find no fertile ground.
Threads of Liberty. In shadows cast by history's gaze, where tales untold weave tangled maze, a whisper rises, faint and low, of freedoms gained yet quick to go. Threads of liberty, fragile and fine, woven in moments, a delicate design. Each choice we make, a stitch in time, binding the fabric, a paradigm. In the quiet corners where silence resides, the echoes of struggles, the unsung guides. For liberty dances on a precarious edge, in the folds of courage on history's ledge.
Not in grand gestures, but in whispers heard, a symphony of voices, each a freedom bird. Yet heed the lesson, this poetic chime. Freedom, once woven, may unravel in time. So guard these threads with vigilant care, for the fragility of freedom lingers in the air. In unity and empathy, our strength is found, to mend the tapestry where hope is found. In commemorating this day, let us reaffirm our commitment to creating a world where the fragility of freedom is met with unwavering resolve. Through education, empathy, and collective action, we honour the memory of those who suffered during the Holocaust and strive to ensure the lesson learned from that dark period shape a future characterised by compassion, understanding, and the enduring strength of freedom.
As we've heard from the readings from Gray's Convent, freedom can be incredibly fragile and is not something we should ever take for granted. Freedom takes many forms in various different ways, whether it's freedom of religion, freedom of self-identity, freedom of expression, of movement, and most importantly, freedom of life. This year's theme, The Fragility of Freedom, was inspired by a line written by Anne Frank in her diaries following the German invasion of the Nazi invasion of the Netherlands. This is when trouble started for the Jews. Our freedom was severely restricted by a series of decrees. The theme reminds us that in every genocide, there are those who actively risk their own freedom to help others, to preserve the others' freedom, to stand up to the regime. And this reminds us how crucial it is to continue to ensure we actually protect freedom for everyone in as many ways as possible. Today, I invite everyone to reflect on how truly fragile freedom can be, and just how vulnerable freedom is to those who as we come together in power, and with unity.
Students from William Edwards School.
Princess Catherine Duleep Singh was born on 27th October 1871 in Thetford, Norfolk. Although she grew up in England, Catherine was the second daughter of the Maharaja Duleep Singh, the last Maharaja of the Sikh Empire in India. He was deposed by the British following the last Anglo-Sikh War in 1849. Catherine grew up in Elverdene Hall in Norfolk, a traditional English estate that had been transformed into an ornate Mughal palace by her father. While her father was in India attempting to regain his throne, Catherine and her sisters were granted accommodation in Faraday House at Hampton Court by their godmother, Queen Victoria, who was said to have been particularly fond of the girls. Catherine's father failed in his attempt to regain his throne and was imprisoned in India. After her mother's death, Catherine and her sisters were moved to Folkestone to the care of Arthur Oliphant.
When living with the Oliphants, Catherine had a German governess, Pauline Lina Stauffer, who was promptly befriended by Princess Catherine and became her lifelong partner. Catherine never forgot her Indian ancestry. In 1903, she toured India, visiting Lahore, Kashmir, Dalhousie, Simla and Holy City of Amritsar. There she attended Diwali festivities and met elderly Sikhs who had fought under her grandfather Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Lion of Punjab. In 1908, Catherine and Lena moved to Castle, where Lena was from, and lived together throughout the First World War. Lena and Catherine's account show this to be a happy time in their lives. Lena said, "We are like two mice living in a little house," and Catherine wrote, "I'm having a very good time of it and enjoying myself thoroughly." Despite living abroad, Catherine was a keen, active member of the women's suffrage movement in the UK. She was a suffragist and a member of the Fawcett Women's Suffrage Group and the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies. In 1912, in order to raise funds for the constitutional women's suffrage works, she established a forest of Christmas trees in Birmingham.
During the 1930s, throughout the rise of the Nazi Party, and as Germany became a more and more dangerous place for Jews to live, Catherine continued to live with Lena and helped German Jewish families by providing a passage to England. The couple's neighbours are reported to have said that the local Nazis disapproved of the old Indian lady. Nevertheless, the pair continued to help German Jewish families until Lena passed away on the 26th of August 1937, aged 79. Catherine was deeply upset by her death, and in her will, she requested that a quarter of her ashes be buried as near as possible to the coffin of my friend, fallen Lena Schaefer. After Lena's death, and with the threat of war looming, Catherine felt that Germany did not have much to offer. She decided to return to England and settled in Coalhouch House in Penn, Buckinghamshire, with her two sisters. Coalhouch House would become a refuge for several Jewish families who had fled Germany and to evacuees from the Blitz. The details of many Jews Catherine managed to help are still emerging, but in some circles she is referred to as the Indian Schindler, in honour of the German industrialist Oskar Schindler, who saved hundreds of Jews by employing them in his factories. One Jewish family that Catherine saved was the Hornstein family. Wilhelm Hornstein, a government lawyer from Braunschweig, Germany, was arrested in the Gestapo and sent to Schorstein concentration camp on the outskirts of Berlin for several weeks. Luckily, Wilhelm was released because capacity at Schaughausen had been overestimated and he emerged from this experience thoroughly shaken. He fled immediately, without any money or possessions, to London.
His wife Ilse and their two children, Klaus, George and Ursula, made their own plans to leave the country. A group of Quakers helped them to secure a passage to Australia in the following September, but this meant staying in Germany another 9 months. The family met Catherine in Berlin and she offered to let them stay with her at her home in Buckinghamshire. She arranged visa sponsorship letters to enable the whole family to be reunited in England. In 2003, Ursula reflected on the kindness of Catherine, a perfect stranger to do that, what you might call a good Samaritan. Catherine passed away at her house in Buckinghamshire on the 8th of November 1942. However, her legacy is shrouded by what was expected to be an exciting discovery. When her bank account was unearthed in 1997, Catherine had no children, so the account was only discovered when the Swiss Bankers Association released a list of dormant bank accounts as part of an effort to restore properties of Holocaust victims to their descendants. There was a great deal of speculation that the account would hold documents that could prove that the Koh-i-Noor diamond that adorns the British Crown jewels was taken from the Maharaja Duleep Singh by deceit. The account was found to contain only money, 1,323 Swiss francs. There was a number of claimants, but the money was eventually awarded to the descendants of Catherine's sister Bamba.
To
start by echoing what
Councillor
Madam
John
Mayor has
Kent.
already said, and by saying how great it is to see quite so many young people here today. And I want to say thank you to teachers, teaching assistants and others at these schools that have managed to find a way in what is a really busy school week to allow the young people to come and take part. And I personally think it is really, really important that young people are here and that young people take part in the commitment. And I'm just always reminded that I've had the privilege on a couple of occasions of going with groups of young folk from Thurrock to the Auschwitz and Birkenau death camps. And in fact, later on, when we come to our pebble laying ceremony, we will see the memorial, which was commissioned, designed, fundraised, paid for by a group of those young people. And this year is the 10th anniversary of the laying of that stone. So I hope everybody just has a really good look at it. And I just always remember going on those trips. The young people saw things that they will never forget, and it genuinely changed people. And those trips always started in the same way. On the first day, we go to Krakow, and you go to Oskar Schindler's factory, which is now a museum of the Holocaust. And one of the exhibits is a mock-up of a 1930s photographer's studio. And on the walls of that studio are genuine photographs taken in the 1930s of Krakow. And the first thing you notice is that Krakow was a really lovely city and a prosperous city. And the pictures were of people doing fairly ordinary things. People at weddings, at birthday parties, at bar mitzvahs, people at sporting events, at football matches, and an outside swimming pool. But you notice that there are people clearly of the Jewish tradition and people clearly not of the Jewish tradition, together, celebrating together, living together, happy together as friends. Then on the second day, you travel the few miles, I think it's about 20 miles from Krakow to Auschwitz. And you travel through Polish countryside, through towns, past houses, past schools, past shops and factories. It's really not very different to riding 20 miles through the Essex countryside. And yet, within 10 years of those photographs being taken, 1 million Jewish people had been slaughtered at that place. And Auschwitz is also now a museum of the Holocaust. And you go in and there are museum exhibition boxes, cases, as big as a room. There are cases that are full of glasses, spectacles, that have been taken from people as they were brought into the camp. A case full of baby clothes, clothes taken from babies and toddlers before they were taken to the gas chamber. A case full of prosthetic limbs, artificial arms, artificial legs. And the one that always lives with me is a case full of human hair that had been shaved from the heads of those who were in the camp to be slaughtered. And the hair was removed for no other reason than it could be woven to make floor coverings, to make cheap carpet. No part of the human body of those who were about to die was left unused. Even skin was taken to make lampshades. Once people had been through the gas chambers and were burnt, the ashes were dug into the ground to use as fertiliser. And remember that Auschwitz initially had been a prisoner of war camp, mainly for Russian prisoners of war. When the Nazis built Birkenau, they learnt the lessons of Auschwitz and they built a factory of death. It was a conveyor belt of death. Before the start of the Second World War, there were around 9 million Jews living in Europe. At the end of the Second World War, 6 million of them had been slaughtered. And I just say, especially to the young people here, if you look at the person standing to your right and the person standing to your left, after that time there would only be one of you there. 2 would be gone. And we reflect today on the fragility of freedom and ask the question, what was it that changed in such a short space of time that allowed those people who had been friends, those people that were in those photographs, to not only stand by and allow so many of their friends to be slaughtered, but many of them took part in it. Later on, we will be asked to read the statement of commitment. It's 7 short sentences, and we will all read it. But I ask everybody to reflect on the meaning of the word commitment. It means that we commit to do something. So I just ask that everybody reads it, everybody thinks about it, everybody means it, and everybody tries to act out the commitments there. Thank you.
And we invite little Thurrock Primary School.
Poignantly, we now have children from Little Thurrock Primary School.
We Remember Them by Sylvan Cammons and Rabbi Jack Kramer.
At the rising of the sun and its going down,
We remember them. 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 As long as we live, they too will live. For they are now a part of us as we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them.
when we have joy we crave to share,
We remember them. We remember them.
when we have achievements that are based on theirs,
We remember them. As long as we live, they too will live. For they are now a part of us as we remember them.
And at that poignant moment, we'll conclude our coverage of this ceremony. But if you have time later on, why not pop into this garden? It's on Alsop Road in Grays.
Councillor explains we're now going to have the opportunity to share together the
The Neil Spate Thurrock Numbers